The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Welcome to the program, as Jimmy Himes will join us momentarily, and we are loaded up on the program today as, man, Jimmy's got a breakdown on Tennessee's basketball roster that I think you're going to want to hear, because Rick Barnes believes that the upcoming basketball roster is actually going to be better than the one Tennessee had last year. So what do you make about that? Comes off a visit that Tennessee had, Tennessee's basketball coach had with Jimmy Himes recently. Also, besides Alabama and Georgia, what are UT's three toughest football games? We'll get into that. Also, Jimmy's take on Nico. Where does he rank among the top quarterbacks? Because Lindy's doesn't have Tennessee's redshirt freshman quarterback in the top three. And we're not going to be a show that breaks down every single list, but I think Lindy's has enough credibility that it's definitely worth mentioning. Despite winning the SEC All-Sports Trophy 3 years in a row, can UT claim to be elite without actually winning a national title, which they have not done? The SEC with the flex for afternoon games, we discussed that yesterday. I want to get Jimmy's take as well. We have an idea of when the football games will be played. I think that's good for Tennessee. Kentucky or Arkansas's roster in basketball, which is better? What's John Calipari walking into? And which three UT sports are best positioned to win a national title? So we are loaded up, no question about it. Jimmy Himes joins us now. We greatly appreciate that. That's brought to you by Varner Ford. Jimmy Himes, how are you, sir?
Dave, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So we have a new member in the fold at Off the Hook Sports. I don't think I've told you yet. Quincy Calhoun is the young one. Caleb Calhoun has had his baby, so the show and the website just growing left and right in all kinds of unorthodox ways.
Well, congratulations to Caleb and his wife. Good that Quincy's now aboard. I would expect Quincy to be doing podcasts within the next 3 years.
And they're going to be deep historic, and they're going to be maybe a little conspiracy laden. All right, let's get right into today's tough question, as I want to dive into Alabama and Georgia and how that relates to Tennessee on Tennessee's football schedule, because despite all the changes, Texas, Oklahoma, and everybody coming in, those are probably still the three toughest. Or are they? Today's tough question is right now, and it's brought to you by our good friend Don Self.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
If we take Alabama and Georgia off the table, because, Jimmy, I would say those are Tennessee's two toughest games, despite the coaching change at Alabama. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. I think Georgia, they won't miss a beat with Kirby Smart. I would favor them to win the national championship. He's loaded outstanding recruiting class after recruiting class after recruiting class. Alabama has done the same thing, except now there's a new coach. They had a number of defections, but they still have tremendous talent. They've got in my opinion, one of the better quarterbacks in the country. It's a different kind of quarterback than what Kalen DeBoer's been used to. But my goodness, the guy, I think his record's like 104-12 at three different stops. The guy's a winner. I think he can adjust. So I think those are the two best teams and will end up being the two highest ranked teams that Tennessee will have played this year.
And I think that Alabama, despite the defections, there's so much talent there that they're going to have a decent transition. I don't know that it's going to be a championship transition, but it's going to be pretty good. So obviously, when you look at Tennessee's schedule, because of the change, Oklahoma kind of pops off of there. So I do want to eventually get to the question, the top three opponents not named Alabama or Georgia. But first, how do you factor in Oklahoma? Because we have an idea of how good those two programs are, Oklahoma and Texas, but still, it's going to be the week in and week out of the SEC, which we know is a challenge.
I think Alabama is going to be a very difficult opponent. First off, they took a dip in Brent Venables' first year 2 years ago. Last year, they bounced back. They had a really good team. They weren't great, but they were really good. They've got a quarterback that they're breaking in. They lost Dylan Gabriel, who transferred to Oregon, but I think it's Jackson Arnold's the quarterback, a highly rated quarterback. He did not play very well in the bowl game, but I dismiss that. I don't look at that and say, hey, that's the finished product. I think he's going to be a really good player. He's going to be surrounded by good players. It's at Norman. And Dave, one of the things we know with Heupel, he's had a history at Tennessee of, at times, laying an egg on the road. Last year it was Missouri. 2 years ago it was at South Carolina. Now, they've got a couple of good wins. They demolished Missouri a couple of years ago on the road. They went to LSU and creamed LSU the year that LSU won the East Division. So they've had some good road wins, but they've also had some bad losses. I thought that loss at Florida last year. Florida wasn't very good, and Tennessee lost that one. So just going on the road has at times been problematic for a Tennessee team under Josh Heupel. I would rank Oklahoma as the third most difficult opponent that Tennessee will play this year.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and go to number two then. Jimmy's appearance, as always, brought to you by our good friends at Varner Ford there in Clinton. Also, portions of the program brought to you by Don Self, State Farm. Customer service still matters. For 40 years, they have built their business on taking care of their customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126, or go to donself.net, donself.net. So let's count them down. Number two, as far as Tennessee's toughest opponents, not named Georgia or Alabama, would be, Jimmy?
I'm going to go with NC State. That's a neutral site game. But NC State won 9 games a year ago. They've got a good football coach. They brought in a transfer, Grayson McCall, who was very good at Coastal Carolina. And I think he'll be every bit as good as the quarterback they had a year ago. So I think that's going to be a challenge for them. People look at NC State and they think, so what? But again, they had a 9-win season, and they're not a slouch. And it also, and while I like Nico Iamaleava, this is only his second start of his sophomore year, his third career start. He's still, I think at that point, still learning to play the position. I don't know that I think he'll be great against NC State. So I think that's going to be a big challenge going on the road. NC State will have, well, I don't know if they'll have much of a home field advantage because I know Tennessee fans will show up get as many tickets as they can to neutralize NC State's potential advantage in Charlotte. So I'm going to go NC State as the next toughest opponent. What about you?
I at this point I'm not as maybe sold on NC State. I'm going to go backwards a little bit and look at Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma I might have in slightly higher regard, but Jimmy, I'm not sure how to factor in how bad Josh Heupel wants that. I believe that coaches at times in the offseason, I believe, based off what I was told, that Eli Drinkwitz ran a completely different defense against Tennessee than he had run all year because he really wanted that one after what had happened the year before with the running up the score. So I don't know how much of an impact can Josh Heupel have because obviously he's going to be very motivated by the trip to Norman.
He is. He's going to be. You're exactly right. He is going to be extra motivated. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him throw some wrinkles at Oklahoma that Tennessee hadn't shown in their previous games this year. or maybe under Heupel at Tennessee. So, yeah, there's no doubt he's going to be very motivated to win that game at Oklahoma. I think he very well remembers getting fired as their offensive coordinator about a decade ago. After all he had done for them, he helped to win a national championship in 2000. He finished second in the Heisman Trophy to Chris Winkie. He was a great player for them for a couple of years coming out of the junior college ranks. But yeah, there's no question that that's a game. If you gave him some truth serum and said, what game would you rather win over any of them? I'm not so sure he wouldn't pick Oklahoma.
I think you're right. I think it sounds crazy being the head coach at Tennessee and you've got the Floridas and the Bamas and the Georgias, but I think you're right. I think if he told the truth, I'm really having trouble thinking that Oklahoma may not be number one. I mean, it's an interesting question because when you take obviously Alabama and Georgia out of the equation, it opens up the field quite a bit. I mean, the road trip to Arkansas, I think Tennessee is a little bit unfortunate that is happening. That game's happening early in the season. If it's later, maybe they're in not so good a shape and thinking about their next coach. I'm curious what you have as the number one, because I don't have a slam dunk in my mind as I look at the schedule.
You mean a number one other than Alabama and Georgia?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Oklahoma, and then my next one's NC State.
Okay, gotcha. So who's number three for you?
Okay, number three is Florida. And I know that Florida is not expected to be very good. I know that they've had a losing record the last 2 years. But I can't help but think that even though Florida's had some teams that weren't very good, hasn't Florida lost just once to Tennessee in the last 17 years? Even with some average teams? Even with the below average team. I mean, last year they had a losing record and Tennessee lost on the road. Now, it's in Knoxville, which I think is an advantage. And by the way, as far as the schedule, I'd much rather play Florida in Knoxville and have Arkansas on the road than Arkansas at home and have to go to Florida.
Yes.
Because it's hard for me to pick Tennessee to beat Florida at Florida. And last year I fell into that trap because Tennessee had 19 senior starters going to Gainesville, and Florida had 2 senior starters. I thought that experience will be the difference. Wrong. So now, having said all that, you got Florida and Knoxville. The last time the two teams played in Knoxville, Tennessee won. Florida had a losing record that year, and if Florida had recovered the onside kick at the end of that game, they may end up winning it, even though Florida wasn't any good again. So for whatever reason, Florida will play one of its 2 or 3 best games of the year against Tennessee, and Tennessee will play one of its 2 or 3 worst games against Florida. That's been the history of this series for the last 17 or 18 years. That's why, even though I don't think Florida's very good, I'm putting that as the third most difficult game for Tennessee to play outside Alabama and Georgia.
Who even competes with Florida would be Kentucky.
Yes.
Kentucky's probably a better football team, right?
Yes. Yeah. But Tennessee, just as Florida's had Tennessee's number, Tennessee has Kentucky's number. And there have been a couple of times when I thought Kentucky had as good or a better team and actually outplayed Tennessee, but Tennessee found a way to win with a key 4th down stop on the goal line or an interception here or there. They just find ways to beat Kentucky, even when Kentucky might be a little bit better. So, but I would put Kentucky as the next most difficult opponent.
Now, I will say this. I think Mississippi State and that coaching staff will score some points.
Against whom?
Against
Tennessee? Well, okay. I think eventually you will be right, but they lost Will Rogers, and I don't know if they have the quarterback to run Jeff Levy's system at this point. I think Mississippi State's offense under him is going to eventually be good. I don't think he'll be as good as Heupel's first year at Tennessee, and Tennessee went 7-6, right, with the loss in the bowl game to Purdue. But I don't think their offense will be as good. I don't think they have as much talent as Heupel inherited at Tennessee. So I don't know how prolific the offense will be right away. I think eventually I would agree with that they could score some points on Tennessee. This time around, I'll say this right off the bat. I don't think Mississippi State will score more than 20 against Tennessee.
Ouch. Well, I'm at 24, so we're not far off.
Okay.
on my pick. I can still remember when Mark Stoops was hired because it was you and I we started talking about working together. It was, I believe it was December of 1999. That's when he was hired at Kentucky. And he's been there and he's been incredibly the same guy and incredibly just above average for all of this time. So it's one of Tennessee's toughest games on the second tier. At what point do Kentucky fans say, I would like a little bit more?
Well, it's a good thing he's not the basketball coach because he'd be at Arkansas with Calipari. I think that
that wouldn't be a bad hire if Arkansas could pull that off.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I will say this about Stoops: he had 2 10-win seasons in a 4-year period. And Kentucky had never done that. And he's also been, while Lane Kiffin's a king of the transfer portal, it looks like Stoops is a king of the quarterback transfer portal, because this will be the 3rd quarterback in a row. He had Will Levis, who had a really good year as a junior. I don't think he played very well as a senior, and I think he may have been banged up, but whatever, he didn't play that well. And then last year, you go with Devin Leary, the NC State quarterback. I didn't think he played that well. Now you're going with Brock Vandegrift from Georgia. So I don't know how good their offense will be. I think Vandegrift's got a lot of talent. Will he mesh? Will he gel with his receiving core, with the offense that they have? I don't know. To me, Kentucky's they'll win 7, maybe 8, in part because their non-conference schedule's weak, in part because Stoops is a good coach, and rarely does Kentucky beat itself. So I think they'll be a pretty good team. They'll get to a bowl game. I don't think they beat Tennessee.
I don't either. And I think that's a bad matchup. I think that's unfortunate timing for Kentucky, just because I believe they've got an offensive coach that's a step ahead of a defensive coach right now. And I think it's unfortunate for Tennessee, unfortunate for Kentucky, or maybe things would be going a bit different for Tennessee. I'm going to remind everyone that Jimmy's appearance is brought to you by our good friend Ray Varner at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
All right, Jimmy, changing gears just a little bit. You spoke to Rick Barnes, and no coach is going to say, wow, what a terrible offseason. Man, things could not have gone worse. We lost all of our great players. I don't know how we're going to build a basketball team. So with that being the backdrop, he was very optimistic about his program after the transfer portal. So your thoughts on what Rick Barnes had to say?
Yeah, I remember when Tennessee lost 4 players in the portal, and the 2 key ones were Jonas Adu and Tobe Awaka. When he lost them, he said, what we need to try to do is improve our roster from last year. And when I asked him if he felt like he'd improved it, he said, yeah, I do. And I like what we've done. I give a lot of credit to my assistant coaches. He did end up saying at the very end of it, now the proof will be in the pudding, what happens with the season. But he likes what he got in the portal. He got, I don't know if I want to go elite score, but he got a really good score in Chaz Lanier, a native of Nashville, played at Ensworth. Dave, the interesting story about him was while he was at North Florida, he averaged 4.7 points as a second-year player. I guess that's what he was. And then he went to 19.7. Who does that? 4.7 to 19.7. But he became an outstanding scorer. Now, I'm not saying he's filling Dalton Connect shoes. I don't think anybody can do that. But he went out and got probably the best score in the transfer portal that you could get. He got a defensive player. Tennessee, as we all know, had trouble against Purdue center, against North Carolina center, against Kansas center, against Mississippi State center. So they got a guy from Ohio State, 6'11" guy named Felix Akpora, blocked 83 shots, very good inside. He's a good rebounder as well. An elite defensive player, doesn't score a lot, but he helps satisfy a need to find a center that can play good defense against really good opponents. Then he went out and got a couple of guys that have more versatility. One guy, and he's not had this as far as I'm concerned. Igor Milicic, he averaged 13 points and 8.5 rebounds. He can go out and shoot a three. Barnes has not had a big man like that could stretch it outside and shoot the three. And I guess you might have somebody else in mind, but maybe like a Wayne Chisholm. Chisholm was 6'9". He could go out and shoot some threes. Wasn't a great three-point shooter, but he could stretch it.
I think he and Ron Slay liked shooting threes. I don't know. I don't know that they needed to be shooting threes. No offense, Ron, in case you're watching driving in Nashville, because I know he does. But I don't know of a big man that you're right. I mean, I think he's the first stretch one. And from what I've seen from him on tape, I think he's going to do it down a little bit more on the baseline too, which I think makes you scary and opens up the middle of the court.
I guess I didn't state clearly, since Wayne Chisholm. Ron Slay came before Chisholm, but since Chisholm, I think he's the most likely guy that can stretch it. And Chisholm, I remember, I got to tell you this quick story. I had a bet with Dane Bradshaw, and I didn't think Chisholm was that good of a three-point shooter, but he did make a few. And I told Bradshaw that there's no way Chisholm will shoot 30% from three-point range this particular year. And dadgum, if in the last game of the season he didn't bank in a three to shoot like 30.1%. If he hadn't banked in the three, and I told him, Dane, that banking in three shouldn't count. Anyway, I lost the bet.
Yeah, it shouldn't count, especially with Dane, who I think is like a real estate developer. So I don't know that I want to be involved in any game at that level. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Like and subscribe. We appreciate that. Some Nico talk coming up as well.
Let me run this about one other. Dubar. Dubar is a scorer from Hofstra, average almost 18 points a game. I think that's another score that brings versatility. So I think Tennessee did a really nice job in the portal.
I agree, and I know what Rick Barnes is supposed to say, but it's hard for me to say the portal. I'm sorry, the roster is better via the portal, barring like an overhaul, a 10-person overhaul, if it doesn't have Dalton Connect on it, because I believe he was one of the top half dozen players at Tennessee. So if you don't have that, it's hard for me not to think maybe is this coach speak.
Well, I'll agree to this. So if you break it down this way, Tennessee lost 4 in the portal. They got 4 in the portal. The 4 they got in the portal are a whole lot better than the 4 they lost in the portal. Okay.
I agree with that.
Now, when you add Connect, Josiah Jordan-James, and Santiago Vescovi in the equation, now you got a pretty good debate about that. But I do think this is interesting. The 4 players in the portal that they're bringing in, and I know that some of this is at a smaller level, they average 57.6 points per game. The players Tennessee lost, including Dalton Connect, averaged 54.6. So 3 points more per game by the 4 in the portal they're adding than the 6 players they lost. Now, does that amount to hill of beans in the way this season is going to unfold? I don't know. But, Dave, I do see a much more balanced scoring team for Tennessee, and I see a more versatile team for Tennessee. Doesn't mean they're better, because I'm with you on Connect. I mean, that guy could change a game and he could win a game for you. I don't know that I see a whole lot of players on this team that could go out by themselves and win a game. Collectively, I think they'll have more balanced scoring, but, boy, they're going to miss Connect.
Jimmy, I'm going to throw a theory at you, and you tell me if you think I'm crazy or not. But I think with the NIL, we're going to see a little bit of a renaissance in college basketball, especially the regular season. I remember, as I'm sure you do, we're slightly different generations, but still, I remember knowing who the starting lineup was at North Carolina or Duke heading into the season, or Kentucky, because there were some repeat players. I think NIL is going to help with that. I think guys that are borderline. Now, even if Connect had another year, he's going to go, right? He's obviously a guy who's going to get paid, and the money's not going to be the same. But if he had another year and he were a little bit lower down the food chain, then you don't have a guaranteed contract if you go in the second round. Second round sounds good, but it's not like the NFL. Jimmy, I think you're going to see some of these guys stay. And if I know who North Carolina's starting 5 is in July, I'm going to get a little bit more excited about the season, I think, because I know the storylines. I think NIL could have a monster impact on college basketball.
Oh, absolutely. And I agree with you. I think you're seeing more players stay in college because they get a good NIL deal as opposed to being undrafted or a second round draft pick. So I agree with you completely on that point. But here's the interesting thing too. Sometimes fans get excited about seeing what the new player can do. Right. So, and having said that, I'm going to go back to this. And in my opinion, I thought James and Vescovy did not have good senior years. I didn't think they played at the level they could have or should have. I thought they had better years in previous seasons. Was that because they acquiesced to Dalton Knecht? Maybe. Did they have an eye on maybe trying to turn pro and try to do different things in their game, which they weren't capable of doing? Whatever the reasons were, they weren't as good previously. But I'll say this. I don't think fans were greatly excited about seeing Dalton Knecht when he signed, right? Nobody knew he would be that good. Now, and I'll just stick to Tennessee on this one. Now that you saw what Knecht can do, I think the Tennessee fan base is saying, hey, can this Lanier average 20 points a game? What about this Dubar? He averaged 18 points. What about this 6'10" guy that can shoot a three? I think there could be a lot of excitement about this Tennessee team just because of the element of the unknown.
Okay, Jimmy knows that I can sometimes go too far into left field, but I'm gonna try here and see what he thinks. I really believe that Rick Barnes adjusted his coaching a little bit. I think the old Rick Barnes 10, 15, 20 years ago might have said, well, Santi's still the guy. This Dalton guy just got here. We'll bring him along slowly. We're going to stick with the offense that Santi's the best fit for. We're not completely changing the offense. I think now he's like, whoa, I'm 2 or 3 or 4 years away from retirement. We're going to do what I think's best with the talent I have that year. I think we've seen a little bit of a change in him. I'm not sure that he would have been so Dalton-centered 10 years ago in his career.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. I do think that Knecht was so good that it was hard to ignore. I asked Jamal Meshack, when did he realize how good Knecht was? And he said on their trip to Italy in the summer, he said, I knew then that guy was special. He also had a monster game against Michigan State in that exhibition, and he made a dunk that even raised the eyebrows of Rick Barnes. So I do think he ended up almost having to take the training wheels off Knecht and say, hey, go get it, which he did. But I also think that Barnes realizes you can't be a top 5 defensive team in college basketball and your offense is ranked number 80 and win at a high level. Can't do that. So this year, I think it's only the second time in Barnes' career, his defensive efficiency was in the top 30. His offensive efficiency was in the top 30. The only other team that did that was, I think, maybe the 2019 team with Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield, Jordan Bone. That's the only one that did that. I think he understands you have to have a productive offense if you want to make a run and be really good. You can't just rely on defense.
Yep, I agree with that. Jimmy's appearance brought to you by our great friend, Ray Varner Ford, there in Clinton Selection. They got that right off the interstate, easy to find. I don't care if you're listening anywhere in East Tennessee or middle of the state or northern Georgia, southern Kentucky, the Carolinas. They've got your selection there. That's Ray Varner Ford.
Wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Talking some Nico next with Jimmy Himes. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare!
Experience it all at Varner Ford in Clinton. Need a quick fix or maintenance? Visit our Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center. Keep your Ford running smoothly with the experts in our service department. Ready for your next Ford? Our sales team is here to guide you to this 24 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Do me a favor, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Jimmy Himes joins us, filling in for Caleb Calhoun, and we greatly appreciate that. And it's time to congratulate Jimmy Himes for winning a heck of an award, the Gary Lundy Writer of the Year Award for our division. And Jimmy, it's not the first award you've won from the Tennessee Sports Writers Association of America. No, but it's not the last. It won't be the last, I'm sure, Jimmy. Congratulations.
Well, Dave, I appreciate it. And to win an award that's got Gary Lundy's name on it means a lot to me. He was a close personal friend. We worked together for years. He was a terrific sports writer, an even better person. Really did enjoy the relationship I had with him. He left us way too early. And so to have and to have his name on an award that I was able to fortunately win means a lot. And I will cherish that. And just really respectful of Gary Lundy. You knew Gary as well, and just a great guy.
I did. An incredible guy. Remember, he was one that would bring his son Christian to practice a lot. Incredible dad. And I did. Congratulations, Jimmy. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I was super happy for you, and it certainly meant a lot.
You won an award too.
I basically they put my name on the piece of paper so that if John Adams, who I finished second to, if at any point he needed something, like I guess there's a banquet or something, if he needs a drink or anything, that he can just hold his hand up and I have to go get it.
You don't have to.
Where's my unsweet tea? All right. So John and I talked about this, but I do want to get your opinion on it because, to me, ball a lot more than John, but also to me, it's pretty wild too. So let's go ahead and go to what the H.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
It's brought to you by Apex Apparel Group Design. I'll tell you more about them here momentarily and how to save a ton of money on your company's promotional material. Like this shirt. How awesome is this? Absolutely love it. All right, so Lindy's didn't have Nico Iamaleava in their top 3 among SEC quarterbacks. Where do you rank Nico. And is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I don't have him ranked in the top 3 either. In fact, I've got him probably about 6th in the league.
Wow.
And maybe even 7th. I appreciate the potential that he has, and I thought he played really well against Iowa. I'll give him that. But it's hard for me to put him ahead of Carson Beck at Georgia, who I think is a Heisman Trophy candidate. Quinn Ewers at Texas, to me, is going to be one of the top 3 possibly quarterbacks taken in the draft. Jalen Milroe, he got Alabama in the college football playoff, won the SEC with him last year. At Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, I think he's a tremendous quarterback. I think what Brady Cook did at Missouri, I think he's special. I like all 5 of those to rank ahead of Nico. And here's the other one, and I think I'm right about this. Graham Mertz at Florida led the SEC in completion percentage. He was well over 70%. I've gone back and forth a little bit with him. I'm projecting that I think Nico's numbers will be better. Also, Florida lost a great running back in Travis Etienne. They lost their best receiver in Ricky Pearsall. So I don't know that I think that Mertz will be as good. So I'm going with Nico at number 6.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to throw the old eye test thing at you. Would you tell me if I'm crazy? I look at, first of all, Carson Beck's off the table. He is the best quarterback in the SEC. I'm sorry, if you're a tried and true Tennessee fan, until Nico shows you something, you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. Period. End of discussion. So, and then to me, it gets interesting, frankly. Quinn Ewers, I've got to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's done something on the field. But my eyeballs tell me that Nico has a better skill set. My eyeballs tell me that he has a better skill set than everybody you named other than Beck. And the one that's interesting to me that I think might have the high ceiling, and we'll see if they use that term when they talk about him in the draft, is Dart. So I arguably, unless he spits the bit, as they say in horse racing, could see him being the 2nd best quarterback in September or October. Would that be crazy based off what you've seen, or is that at least attainable, you think, for him?
I would be shocked if he's the 2nd best quarterback. I would also up my win total from Tennessee from 9 to either 10 or 11 if he's that good. I just think the other quarterback, and part of it is this. The other quarterbacks that I mentioned have all proven themselves. They've all won at a high level for a complete season. For example, I don't think Milroe is the greatest skill set necessary. Now, he's a tremendous runner. He's a better runner than Nico. Is he a better passer? I'm not sure that he is. But they won the SEC and made the college football playoff with him. So it's hard for me to put Nico ahead of Milroe. I don't have enough sample size from Nico to rate him among better than the quarterbacks that I mentioned. Does he have a very good skill set? Yes, he does. I like it a lot. I am worried I'm worried a little bit about Tennessee's offensive line. I think the offensive line is a concern. I think that Nico could get hit quite a bit. I think he's fragile. He looks frail. He needs to put on some weight. Can he make it through an entire season? I don't know.
Well, now, are you concerned about them if they stay healthy, which is never happens in football? But if the starting 5 stayed healthy, then I think they would be good as far as protection. But that's not going to happen. But
I think they'd be decent in protection. But here's the other thing too. I think with Hendon Hooker, you ran a lot of zone read. You didn't run it as much with Milton. Most of the time when they ran it with Milton, it was a predetermined handoff because I don't think Milton liked running the football. So then they decided, hey, let's just tell him to keep it on the first play against Texas San Antonio, and he ran for 75 yards. Okay. But he didn't like running, and he wasn't very good, I don't think, at reading the zone read. Hendon Hooker was, and Hendon Hooker got hit a lot. He was also durable for the most part. Didn't finish the season. But he was durable. When you ask Nico to run the zone read, which means he has to keep it, He's going to get hit a lot more, I think, than Milton got hit. Now, can he stand up to that? I don't know.
I heard that. I heard that too about the zone read, that he wasn't making the read. That is like asking me to take notes left-handed or not. I mean that to me is so anti-football and anti what the whole point of that offense is. I'm good for them that it worked out in that one long run that you referenced. That's great. They had a 50-50 shot, basically. Other than that, it could get a guy killed. Now, he's big, so maybe he wouldn't get hurt, or maybe they wanted him to get hurt. But, I mean, Jimmy, that to me is – and you're not – and I'm not disbelieving you. I believe you because you're the second person that's told me that. That, to me, is an incredible indictment and one that you may say it's too far, but we've discussed it on the show. I think they were closer to using Gaston more at times last year than maybe some people believe.
Yeah, I'm not in that camp.
Okay. Just because I think around about October-ish, early October, Nico was maybe banged up with a wrist and not ready, is what I was told.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if Milton got hurt in game 7, what would they have done? Okay. Wow. So they, for whatever reason, they were intent on redshirting Nico. Now, and I say for whatever reason, does anybody think he's going to be around here for 4 more years?
No.
Especially if he's as good as advertised. So I wonder if they'd have gone with, I think they'd have gone with Nico over Gaston Moore. You think they'd have gone with Moore over Nico, right? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I think that there was concern enough of Nico being light and banged up that they didn't want to get him gun shy. So it was at least a discussion. I'm not saying it was a definite, but I think it was pretty close to a 50-50 at one point.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that the coaching staff stuck with Joe Milton because they were afraid of potentially losing the locker room?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think he not 100% in the locker room, but I think the majority of the locker room like Milton.
No, completely agree. I think that was. I'm not saying it was like if he would have gone out there and threw 8 interceptions and a half. I mean, that wouldn't have been. Oh, but he's such a great dude. They wouldn't have gone that far. But I do think that they would have. There was a point in which that they might have done so, but I think it probably saved him. I think he probably played a couple of more bad quarters because he was a great guy, which sounds weird, but because he was, I will say this, even the guy, I know guys that didn't like him on the team said that most of the other people do. Yeah. So he was incredibly popular.
He was. And I also wondered this from Josh Heupel's perspective. Obviously, Heupel was in love with his arm. He brought him in from Michigan and for whatever reason decided to start him over Hendon Hooker at the beginning of the 2021 season. Now, would anybody think Milton was even close to as good as Hooker? No. Why the coaches saw that in Milton at that time, I don't know. But I do think that the staff, and Heupel included, they were in love with Milton's arm. They felt like he could stretch the field. Yeah, he could stretch it, but you got to be able to complete those passes. And he did not complete them at as high a level as he should have or could have. Of course, Ramel Keaton didn't help him on a few of those. But when I look back, it's a really baffling decision that you would have started Milton over Hooker 3 years ago.
Yeah. Don Self, State Farm customer service still matters. Also, is Josh Heupel running a business for 40 years? Don Self has been doing that. They built their business on taking care of their customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126, or go to donself.net, donself.net. He'll take care of you in that Chattanooga area, or he will be sure and make the connection between you and another State Farm agent to make sure when those claims are made that they are paid. I was told that the Gaston Moore move, had they made it, would have certainly sent the wrong message, and it would have sent the wrong message to some advertisers. So I wonder if you're at the point where, not to say that factored in the decision, but I wonder if you're Josh Heupel, if kind of like a GM drafted a quarterback, but he's not as good in practice as that 7th round pick. If you got to play the guy that has money coming, it's a weird position that a college coach could find himself in, Jim.
Are you comparing Gaston Moore to Brock Purdy?
Not Brock Purdy specifically, but if you want to go there.
I'll say this about Gaston Moore, and I do like a lot of aspects of his game. I think that if Nico got hurt in game 2, I think Tennessee could be a bowl team, but I don't think they could win 9 or 10. I think there's some other games, but I do think he'd be efficient enough to beat more than half the teams on Tennessee's schedule.
No, and no, nobody hates Joe Milton on this team. Despite winning the SEC All-Sports Trophy 3 years in a row, can UT claim to be the SEC's best sports program without winning a national title? Let's go that right now. And it's brought to you by our good friends at Banks & Jones, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, Banks & Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. So, Jim, I got the email. I wrote about it. Tennessee won the All-Sports Trophy 3 years in a row. But even as I was writing about it, I kind of double-checked a couple of times to make sure. Because it didn't really feel like, because they haven't won a big one, they haven't had that national title moment. It doesn't feel like they're at that level. Are they kind of doing it quietly? Do Tennessee fans understand what's actually going on campus?
I think they do. Look at the baseball crowds.
Yeah.
Football is back to selling out the stadium before the season even starts. With men's basketball, they packed Thompson Bowling Arena at the Food City Center multiple times. So I think they get it. The softball team, they had sellouts. It was hard to get a ticket. They only seat 2,000. So I do think that the fans get it as far as the 5 primary sports that we're talking about. Women's basketball has struggled to reach the level that they had been accustomed to under Pat Summitt, which means getting to the Final Four. It's been a long time. Tennessee hadn't been to the Final Four since 2008. So while women's basketball is hanging in there and they're the 4th best program in the SEC, that's not what Lady Vols basketball is about. But those other sports, I think they do get it. Dave, I actually, and I've tried to bounce around a little bit. I went to a softball game. It was packed. I went to a volleyball match, and there were a couple of thousand people at a volleyball match at Thompson Bowling making a whole bunch of noise. I was stunned. And you say, well, 2,000 at volleyball. That's a whole lot more than I thought. I would have been closer to 200 than 2,000. I think.
Wait, 2,000 at volleyball?
Oh, yeah, easily. And they were loud. Yes.
Wow.
And you're surprised just like I was.
Wow.
And I was there. So I think the fan base gets it. I think they appreciate it. I think they're enjoying it. I guess back to your question, can you claim to be the best all-sports program if you're not winning a national championship? I'm going to go yes, and I'm going to go yes from this perspective. 3 years ago, Mississippi State won the baseball national championship. They have a better all-sports program than Tennessee? No. They did have a natty. Ole Miss won a national championship in baseball 2 years ago.
Okay, but obviously you're going to change your argument if it's football, right?
That does, yeah. Well, so here's the deal. I would even give you this. I'm maybe a little bit off on this, but in 2012, I don't know where they finished in the all sports, okay? But Alabama won a national championship in men's golf. They won a national championship in women's golf, won a national championship in softball. That's better than winning the all sports trophy.
Yeah.
You got 3 national championships. If you win one in football, Boy, it's hard to argue that one. I get that. But if you're Georgia and you win a national championship in football and you finish 8th in the all sports trophy, are you the best all sports program in the SEC?
Yeah, I wonder too. And I was thinking this the other day because I got caught up on campus and I was just driving around, did a little memory lane thing. Hey, I used to be a student here, blah, blah, blah. They built this building, blah, blah, blah. And I thought to myself too, there's a different sort of fan expectation. And I'm curious on the message board how you may want to answer this, because it seems to me like the fan nowadays is a little bit nicer. And I'm not saying that an average fan would rather be good across the board and not elite in one like football. But I do think there's more of an understanding. And I don't know if part of this is a socioeconomic thing and part of it's COVID. People seem to be nicer since then. But there seems to be this understanding that, yes, every other team in the SEC is doing their best to win the SEC. And some of them are as well equipped, if not better equipped. And Jimmy, I don't know, maybe some fans are happy with that. To me, the rest of the teams for the betterment of your program could be incredibly average and the football program be elite and you're better off there. But I may be in the minority in that mindset.
Gosh, it's hard to quantify that. So I'll go back to this. As I mentioned, if Georgia wins a national championship in football and they finish 8th in the all sports trophy, are they excited about the football title? Absolutely. But I can't look at them as having the best sports program in the SEC if they do that. Could you?
Well, okay, let me play devil's advocate. You've got 80 athletes, 85, 100, if you want to include walk-ons on that program. So the rest of these programs that carry equal weight in terms of the trophies only have, 15 to 20? So you're talking about having the same sort of impact on an equal number of players' lives. So yes, I think a championship in football should be viewed as a better, more significant accomplishment than any other sport. I do believe that.
I do too. But I'll go back to this. If you're great in football and you stink in the other 20 sports, why are you the best all sports program? You're the best football program, not all sports program. And by the way, one of our listeners is convinced that this will be a moot point because baseball is going to win the national championship this year, which they could.
They very well could. And John and I got into this discussion. How close is college baseball to overtaking college basketball in terms of popularity? I will answer it this way, Jimmy. And if you think I'm wrong, tell me. You move this thing back 2 weeks and it's a July the 4th celebration, which is open right now. And it's rare that you have a holiday open that you could take advantage of. Nobody's going to watch the stupid hot dog eating contest over a good baseball game. But
I've never heard of Joey Chestnut. Who the heck is that?
Yeah. I mean,
who cares?
How close do you think baseball might be to overcoming basketball, if at all?
I actually don't think it's that close. And I'm going to use some numbers that I did not research, but it was on the Sports Source with John Pennington. The highest rated softball game drew well over 1 million people, like during the regionals.
Mm-hmm.
The highest rated baseball game had 100,000. It was 10-1. 10-1 on viewership of softball versus baseball. Now that shocks me. But based on those numbers, I don't know how I see baseball overtaking men's basketball if softball gets more viewers than baseball.
Okay, I'm not arguing with those numbers. They don't surprise me, actually, but
They surprise me.
If I moved it back 2 weeks, where, first of all, you're not playing freezing cold games in February that are stupid, where you're still competing with the NFL, where you're competing with you would be competing less with basketball. What do you think about that move? Then could baseball draw close to basketball?
I don't know. So why are there not more eyeballs on baseball than softball? One of the things that I think has hurt baseball is a lot of times you have to you're investing. It's 4 hours. The games last too dang long. I think that's what's hurt Major League Baseball. Now, Major League Baseball has done a lot about speeding up the game, and so has college baseball. But gosh, there was about a 4-hour game. Didn't Tennessee have almost a 3.5-hour game with Evansville? Sometimes those games last so long. You're testing the patience of the fans that are watching. And I'm not just talking about the diehard Tennessee fan. I'm just talking about the fans in general of college baseball. I just don't think a whole lot of them want to watch a game that lasts that long if their team is not the one competing. So, and I love college baseball. I think it's exciting. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy watching a really good baseball game more so than a softball game. But in softball, you're going to get 2 hours, and that's about it. And in a baseball game, it may be 3.5 to 4 hours. I think that hurts the sport.
Completely agree. And, it's funny because we have Stacey Oliver who writes for us, and she's has followed the Braves and them and done a lot of stuff. And she comes over to do some college baseball, and the first thing she says is, man, these college baseball games are long. It seems like we were just having the conversation that the Major League Baseball games were too long. And now, I don't know if you sat down to watch a Major League Baseball game. Have you lately?
If it doesn't involve the Astros, the answer is no.
Yeah, but you probably enjoy those Astros games a little more because they're like 2 hours and 20 minutes now. They're pretty good to watch.
Well, and I watched them. I don't watch them in the regular season. I watch the Astros in the playoffs.
You might be surprised. The regular season is actually enjoyable. I've been pleasantly surprised. Brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Go to Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. The promo code HOOKED for 10% off. I remind you that we're brought to you in part by our good friend Medicare Misty. Coming up, what does Tennessee think? What does Jimmy Himes think of Tennessee's schedule that is out somewhat with the flex deal? But we have an idea of when the Vols will play. We'll discuss that with Jimmy Himes up next. Brought to you by our good friend Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All right, Jimmy. One of the things that I have always thought about college football, even when I was a youth, as they said, is there something about was it Benny?
Yep.
My cousin. My cousin Benny. Anyway, so my cousin Benny. So one of the things I never liked about college football, even when I was young, is having to wait maybe 6 days before or 12 days before to see when a game was going to be kicked off. I thought it was silly. I thought it was goofy. How do you make plans? And you got to remember, I'm just 8 years old, so I didn't have a big social calendar at the time. But still, I wanted to know where I needed to be at noon on a Saturday during game day. So, but it appears we've gotten around that some with the flex scheduling. What do you think? I know that you have to be there for kickoff for work, so obviously you care what time it is, but your family also and your friends are there for a lot of times just to have a good time. What do you think this does for fans? How much do you think it helps fans to have an idea of when Tennessee will be playing? Because with the flex schedule that was released yesterday, you have a pretty good idea of when the Vols will be on the field.
Yeah, it helps tremendously because you want to try to plan ahead. And whether it's a noon game or a night game, that could impact it. If it's a night game, typically the fan who's traveling from out of town has to stay overnight. If it's a noon kickoff or a 1 o'clock kickoff, they can stay the night before, watch the game, and then drive back to where they were, as long as it's within a 5-hour drive, roughly. So I like it a lot. I think getting out there, letting folks know when the games are is good. I also think that when the SEC has kind of limited the number of TV partners that it has, it's easier to do because you don't have ESPN fighting with CBS and so forth, trying to figure out what games. Now it's either ABC or ESPN. And so that has made it easier, but I like it a lot, and it's good. It's great for the fans. So I appreciate that. The one thing, though, that I would like to see them do is if you're playing a sorry opponent like Kent State, that has to be a noon game.
Has to be. You
cannot play that at night. No. So that would be. But and I think, if I remember this right, Tennessee has 4 night games scheduled. They've got 3 roughly noon games scheduled, and 5 are flex. And the 5 flex ones, I get it. I guess all of them except maybe Arkansas, but I get that because you want to try to figure out the best window for your better games. I understand that. But yeah, I think for the fans, it's a tremendous move to get it out there early, to get it out there basically in mid-June so that they can plan around those kickoffs. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I think, too, that, okay, so the television start time windows for weeks 4 to 14 are defined as early would be noon to 1, afternoon 3:30 to 4:30, night would be 6 to 8, and then flex would be games flex between the afternoon, the 3:30 to 4:30 slot, or the night, the 6 to 8. So the Vols have 5 flex games on the slate, including Oklahoma, Arkansas, Florida, Alabama, Georgia. All of those games will feature a start time between 3:30 to 4:30 or 6 to 8. Now, I don't know that they did this, Jimmy, for this type of fan, but I will give you a really weird out of left field positive that could come from this. You may or may not be aware, when you and I worked together, there used to be a Delta flight that would leave Knoxville at like 6 in the morning on a Sunday, go to Dallas. And there were a couple times that me and my wife, and it was affordable. And then it would come back that very same day. So you'd be back in your bed. You'd go watch the Cowboys again. We did it twice. You'd be back in your bed that night. Well, I'm not saying you could be back in your bed, but you could fly out on a Saturday morning and book that in June if you know that it's not going to be a noon game, because now you know that all of these afternoon, night, or flex games will be 3:30 or later. So I know that I can get in town by 10 o'clock, and I've got plenty of time to make the game. I think it could help. I think it could help travel quite a bit for all SEC schools.
It also could help in this regard. If you book the flight in June, isn't it a whole lot less expensive than if you book it 6 days or 12 days out to go to Norman, Oklahoma, or Fayetteville or whatever? So I think it helps financially with the fan base as well. It's just a much more fan-friendly way to plan your road trips in particular. Now, sometimes it can affect your home games too. If you got people coming in from Memphis or Charlotte, maybe. But yeah, I think it's a really good move for the fans. And I didn't realize that about the Delta flights to Dallas. That's a good example. But I do think it gives the fans a cheaper way to go to games, and also affords them the ability to plan ahead.
Yeah. Well, because if I'd have gotten stuck out there, if the flight would have got canceled, and I had to call in sick the next day, I didn't want you to know that I was in Dallas. No, I'm Quality Tire Pro, like the old NASCAR excuse when it rains. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling good on Monday. It has nothing to do with the race. Quality Tire Pro, the Eberle family, has been serving the Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, including Michelin, full-service automotive brake alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Boulevard or online at qualitytirepros.com, qualitytirepros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports said hello. Tell him Dave Hooker said hello. Say, hey, Bo, how are you, sir? More after this. But Jimmy Himes nice enough to sit in for Caleb Calhoun, who has something to do. I don't know, some sort of baby or something. I'm Dave Hooker. 2 minutes. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Do me a favor, if you don't mind, hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Want to be sure and make sure that you're a member of Hooker's Corner. You can be a John. Go ahead and join Hooker's Corner. Jimmy, I haven't seen your email on there yet. Is it just a matter of time until you become a John on Hooker's Corner?
Absolutely.
There you go. If you sign up, you can win fantastic prizes, just $9.98. You also get added recruiting information. You get some more interaction with me and Caleb. Well, a lot of me, because Caleb is just trying to get rest nowadays. Weekly prizes, and we also give away our monthly prize, which is right here. Pretty cool. College World Series autographed Tony Vitello baseball. So all you have to do is sign up, just $9.98 a month. We hope that you can be a part of it. We certainly appreciate that. As if you want to be a part of Hooker's Corner, we would love that. All right, Jimmy, we've got business to get to, and that is which 3 UT sports are best positioned to win a national title. We discussed earlier that Tennessee's won the All Sports Trophy 3 years in a row, but they haven't won a national title yet. I'm going to try to steal one, if you don't mind, and say that I think it's baseball, and I think it might be in the next couple of weeks. I see a maturity in this crew, but outside of that, I would be working hard to find the next 2 that I think are well poised. I say that despite what Tennessee's basketball team did last year, because I haven't seen the new guys that are in this year. What do you think?
I agree. It's clearly baseball. When you look at what Tony Vitello has done, and he's knocking on the door again. This is the 3rd College World Series appearance for Tennessee in 4 years. And the one team that didn't make it was arguably his best team. They set a school record with 57 wins. So it's clearly baseball. The next one, I'm going to go softball. We have seen the softball team make the College World Series a few times. They made it a year ago. They lost at home. They were upset at home by Alabama in the Super Regional. But what Karen Weekly and Ralph before that, what they did, they established a tremendous program. They've been to the College World Series multiple times. Now it's just under Karen's tutelage. I think that's number 2 on my list. The third one is hard.
Can I ask you about the softball program, if you don't mind, real quick. And that is, because it seems like that I had the mindset that they were definitely winning the championship and it was just a matter of time. That's back in the Monica Abbott days. Are you a little surprised that they haven't won a championship under the weekly leadership?
Yeah, I thought they would have by now, because when you knock on the door long enough, you think you're going to finally win one. I guess I harken back to this, though, because it's sort of timely. So Jerry West just passed away, one of my favorite basketball players when I was growing up to watch him. He played in 8 NBA finals, and he won 1. I think he won the last NBA finals he played in. So he was 0 for 7 until he won 1. So the point is, if you keep knocking on the door, eventually you think you're going to break through. But to your point, yes, I did think the Lady Vols would have won a World Series title, Women's College World Series by now. They had 2 outstanding pitchers this year. They will have 1 next year unless they bring somebody else in. This Pickens is about as good a pitcher as it was in the SEC. She was the SEC Pitcher of the Year. So if you have 2 dominant pitchers, the thing that I thought hurt the Lady Vols, all of a sudden they had several games where the bats just totally went silent. The hitting coach is now the head coach at Auburn, and they're bringing in another hitting coach that's had success. So I do think the Lady Vols will eventually get it done, but they cannot have their bats go silent during tournament play.
No, and with the basketball program, I mean, I like what they've done. You keep knocking on the door there, but goodness gracious, you talk about the luckiest sport. I mean, you face the wrong team on a hot shooting night, you can get beat no matter how good you are.
Yes. Yeah. So let's try to figure out that third one. So that's hard. I can't go football, right? That's just so darn hard to win in football.
No, you can't go football.
So men's basketball, they've never been to the Final Four. Hard for me to go there. I'll tell you the one to watch. And watch men's track. Watch that one. They will have eligible, I believe, next year, the coach's son, who was an Olympian a few years ago. He got a multi-year ban for a controversial doping issue. And when he returns, he won the NCAA 400. He'll be on a relay team that might win it. And here's the key thing about track. If you've got 4 studs in track, you can win a national championship. If you can win the 100, the 200, win a couple of relays, that's enough points to win a national championship. You win a conference championship with a lot of depth. You win a national championship with elite talent. And I think the track program on the men's side next year is going to have elite talent. I'm going to go men's track next year as a potential national champion.
I miss the days, and I'm sure a lot of people do, that maybe were on campus in the 90s and 2000s where they had the Sea Rays, and that was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all of those big track events. Why has track seemingly slipped a little bit? Because I know people think I'm insane right now, especially if you're 25 years old, but track used to be bigger than baseball. It was for me as a student. People knew what was happening with track, and sometimes we didn't even know there was a baseball series going on.
Well, this may be 40 years ago. I can't remember, but Ivy Crockett set the world record in the 100-yard dash. They're in a 9 flat. So you had the best track athletes in the country. Here's the thing that I think has hurt the popularity of track at Tennessee a little bit. A lot of your elite track performers played football. Willie Gault.
True.
Now, going way back, Richmond Flowers, but Willie Gault. Tennessee had a great track program, and they had a number of football players that were on the track team that were elite. Sam Grady was an elite runner. You don't have that anymore. So even though Tennessee might have a national championship contender in a few, look, Justin Gatlin and Christian Coleman both were phenomenal in the 100 and 200 in the NCAAs. Both were NCAA champions. But outside of that, you could have a great pole vaulter, you could have a great decathlete, you could have a great 400 meter. People don't know who they are. If they played football, you'd know who they were, but they don't. And I think that lack of coordination between football and track that Tennessee used to have, I think it's probably curtailed the popularity of track a little bit because you don't know who they are and they don't play football.
Don't you think that's probably across the board, though, that guys aren't able to do the double nowadays?
I do.
I mean, now I'm a firm believer, and your family may have these decisions to make with your little grandson one day. I'm a firm believer that you participate in all sports and you grow that competitive spirit until you get to be about 18. And then at that point, unless you're something special like a Dion or a Bo Jackson, it's probably time to make a decision if you're that type of athlete. But I think just me personally, I think you play it all up until then.
I do too, and I played as many as I could. If there was a ball involved, I was out there playing it. I agree with that. And you're saying 18 is the magic number. Right now, it's like if you're 10, you got to choose between baseball, soccer, or basketball when you're 10 years old. What? But that's what some are doing. And tennis, they figure out what they think their son or daughter is best in, and they focus on that sport. And I don't like taking away the opportunities. One thing I really like, I may be slightly off, but I think I'm right about this. Carlin Pickens, the outstanding Lady Vols pitcher, she was a great volleyball player, and I think she was also really good in track. She was a multi-sport athlete. And to me, too often we're getting away from that. Heath Schuler was a multi-sport athlete. I think he led her in 4 sports. We're getting away from that with too many youngsters. I'm with you. Let them play as many sports as they can. And then when that time comes to figure out if they're good enough to be a professional or at least get a college scholarship, go that direction.
You know the thing that Heath's never done in sports that might surprise you?
What?
He's never filled out an NCAA tournament bracket.
What?
Yeah. I asked him.
Does he consider that gambling?
I have no idea. He just said, nope. Somebody asked me to do it once and I didn't do it and I haven't done it since. I was like, okay. So I guess you won't be a part of the crew. Rig Terry Jewelry Design provided the prize for that fantastic drawing that we had with the NCAA tournament bracket. Rick Terry Jewelry Design, they want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, the Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. Jim, Kentucky or Arkansas, the best basketball roster. It was funny. You came up with this topic, and I found it very interesting because at that very moment, literally, I was getting insulted via direct message on Twitter by an Arkansas beat writer who thinks I'm an idiot for making fun of Arkansas's programmer, John Calipari. So here's hoping you say Kentucky to make this person even more angry. But put your Dave bias aside and tell me who has the best basketball roster. Who should the Vols be most concerned about?
Arkansas. Sorry. Calipari got about 3 players that he had committed to Kentucky. He also got a couple of really outstanding players in the transfer portal. When I looked at his roster and I compared it to Kentucky's, I didn't think Kentucky's was as good. Now, what's also interesting from Calipari, and he said that this at the SEC spring meetings, he said the days of me taking 7 freshmen are over. He said, I will no longer sign more than 4 freshmen, and then I'm going to complement my roster with transfer portal players that are veterans or veterans that came up through his program. He said, because I'm tired of losing to 25 and 26-year-olds. Well, okay. He's talking about one player that was 26 years old, whatever his name was, that hit like 9 threes against him. He wasn't losing to 25 and 26-year-olds, but he was losing to 22 and 23-year-olds who were seniors, who were veterans, who had played the game and were more physical than the freshmen. I think Kentucky arguably had the most talented roster in the SEC last year, but it was a bunch of freshmen that couldn't handle playing, that weren't as good in dealing with the team basketball and as physical as some of the teams that beat them, like Tennessee or like Alabama. So
your body changes so much too. I can remember Shai Gilgeous-Alexander covering him in high school and thinking, I don't have the feet, obviously, but if I could put my hand on him, I could probably guide him around a little bit because he was so slim. And here he is now. This has just been 4 years and he's big enough to be one of the best up-and-coming players in the NBA. Yeah, I mean, your body just changes from 18 to 22.
Look at Dalton Connett. He was 6'3" coming out of high school and kind of wiry, and he went to junior college. And then he went to Northern Colorado. And he probably didn't blossom till his third year in college. And then his fourth year in college in Northern Colorado, he was outstanding, even though didn't he make second team all-conference?
Yes.
He led the league in scoring, but he was second team all-conference in a weak conference. And then we saw what he did last year. So absolutely, your body can develop a lot between the ages of 18 and 22. But getting back to our question about Calipari, the makeup of his squad is going to be different. He also said that he's going to stick with an 8-person roster unless he can find a 9th person that he thinks is really good. He said because it's become too hard to manage a roster with double-digit players because they all want playing time. They all want NIL deals. They all talk about how great they are. It's just hard to manage when you got that many people. And, unless a couple of them are like your son who's a walk-on, and then he's going to do anything that you ask him to do. But when I looked at the talent level, I thought Arkansas's talent was better than Kentucky's for this year.
I want to, Jimmy, let me ask you this. Brought to you by TriStar Hats. For the latest in TriStar Hats, go to the original TriStarHatsCo.com, TriStarHatsCo.com. Hats, apparel, and more. They're awesome. And they're made by our good friends at Apex Apparel, where you can call Tyler, 865-919-3001. Look at what I got. It's pretty nice. 865-919-3001. I didn't have to deal with somebody online from goodness knows where. I worked with Tyler. And if you mention Off the Hook Sports, work with Tyler and get 15% off. The number right down below, 865-919-3001. With John Calipari, I got a double barrel question for you. One, do you think it's fair that he gets criticized for not being a good X's and O's coach? And if so, is it the player development or is it the actual X's and O's, the scheme? Is it fair to criticize him for being a college coach when you take out the college recruiter part of it?
I think what has helped him win in so many games is he's an elite recruiter. I will give him credit for this. A lot of his teams at Kentucky, in particular early on, when he had a whole bunch of freshmen, they played good defense. So he was doing something right to get them to play good defense. I don't think he's a great tactician when it comes to like the offensive scheme that you're running. But for him to be able to get those players to play hard, to get after it, and perhaps part of his selling point was, look, you still have to play some defense in the NBA, so this improves your stock. Maybe that's a part of it. I think he's an okay tactician and a great recruiter. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question, but I definitely think he's a better recruiter than he is an on-floor coach.
Okay, so I got 3 quick hitters for you. I'm going to turn it into 4 so I can do it as part of this. And it is time for 4 Downs, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
All right, here we go. And the one, the only Cooper Mace is going to tell us what to do and when to go.
Cooper Mace here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thanks,
Coop here. First down.
Thanks, Coop. We appreciate that. So, John Calipari, is he a above average coach in terms of player development or below average coach?
I'm going to go above average. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right. Let's go with second down, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Same question for scheme. Above average, below average.
I'm gonna go above average just because it is hard to win as many games as he's won through the years. So I'm gonna go above average, but not a whole lot above average.
What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
John Calipari can actually benefit from having less talent.
No.
I know.
And I
It's hard
hesitate
to
on
say
that
that,
one
isn't
because
it? Because you want to say easier to manage, but it's less talent. Don't we all want talent in sports?
yeah, and if my best 7 are better than your best 7, I should beat you. It doesn't matter if I now. And the reason, okay, so if you have 4 injuries, all right, that changes the equation. But typically, you don't have that many injuries in basketball. So no, I'm going to go with the players. I'm going to go with that.
Lastly,
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
John Calipari will win another national title.
No,
I don't think so either.
Nope. He's done.
You say that quickly and strongly. Why? You feel pretty strong about that?
Yeah, I feel very strong because he's going to have to rebuild at Arkansas. And I don't think he's going to be able to rebuild fast enough. He only won 1 at Kentucky in, 15 years? Because he had Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. So if he only won 1 at Kentucky, why would he win 1 at Arkansas? The answer is 0.
He's Jimmy Himes. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. I'll talk to you on Friday where Spencer Riley will join us. That should be fun at 10 a.m. weekdays. For Jim, I'm